Tunisia has been special and close to the Ibn Rushd Fund for a very long time now. And over the years, many thinkers, creators, writers from Tunisia have contributed to our work and events. In 2007, there was the filmmaker Nouri Bouzid, who won the Ibn Rushd Prize, a modernizing force both in Tunisian society and in film. In 2011, the human rights activist Sihem Ben-Sedrine won the Ibn Rushd Prize when it called for a journalist who had fought for democracy. And in fact, it was her who wanted to introduce me and my husband Hikmat Bushnak to tonight's guest, Dr. Moncef Marzouki, when we were visiting Tunisia in 2012. Didn't work out that time, so I am very glad to have a second chance 10 years later. Also in 2011, the judge Mokhtar Yahyaoui, who was instrumental in the Tunisian Constituent Assembly, held an Ibn Rushd lecture on this very topic, the creation of a constitution. In 2014, the writer and politician Rashid Ghannouchi won our prize, a decision that our independent jury of that year took and that we abided by, despite the controversial reaction this provoked, because we, the Ibn Rushd Fund as an association, support freedom of thought, which can be found in different political camps or political directions. I think Dr. Marzouki might dwell on this point in his talk later. In 2016, we had the philosopher Adem Timmet on our stage, both for an Ibn Rushd lecture and a Diwan al-Falsafa, our philosophical salon. Many times, our member, the philosopher Sarhan Dweeb, has shared his advice with us and moderated our great event held here in the Forum Factory in January 2020, celebrating the 9th anniversary of the beginning of the Tunisian Revolution in cooperation with the Magde Association. And the final name in this list of Tunisian contributors to our work is the great Omezine Benchikha, who was part of our jury for the Ibn Rushd Prize in 2019 and herself won the second prize last year in 2022. So I am very happy to welcome Dr. Moncef Marzouki to our stage tonight to introduce his new book, Ideologies in Crisis Alternatives, so far published in Arabic only. And I think the Ibn Rushd Fund shares a fundamental conviction with Dr. Marzouki, who said, which I read online, it may not be easy to change the world, but it is criminal not to try. Dr. Moncef Marzouki, he was the first democratically elected president of Tunisia after the January 14th revolution in 2011, and was elected to the presidency by the Tunisian National Constituent Assembly, the first president in modern history to arrive at this position through fair and transparent elections. He was defeated in the presidential elections in 2019, won by the current president, Kais Saied, and retired from politics, and is now living in exile in Paris. And I would now like Dr. Marzouki to come to the stage.
Well, you know that today we are the 17th of February, and you know probably that it is the 12th anniversary of the Libyan revolution. This afternoon I was on television, on Libyan television, and they asked me, what's your feeling today, and what would you like to say to the Libyan people? And I responded that, first, I'm very proud of what happened. What the Libyan people, the Tunisian people, the Syrian people, the Egyptian people did 12 years ago. And I asked my friends, my Libyan friends, to be very, very careful, because we are facing a new storytelling saying that, hey, look, Look, the catastrophe now you have in Libya, the catastrophe now you have in Syria. This is your fault because of your so-called revolution. And I said, look, you have to be very, very careful with this storytelling because first, the people who was telling this story are the same people that pushed our population to revolt. So they are the responsible of the revolution. This is the first crime. The second crime is that they have organized the counter-revolution and they did everything. They did everything. Everything awful, everything cruel, everything inhuman, you know, to stop, to punish our population because they have revolted for asking for freedom, asking for dignity, and so forth. So this is why I think that those people, you know, telling that, hey, look what's happened to your revolution, are criminal, twice criminal, because they have pushed our population to revolt because of their corruption, of their repression, etc., of the dictatorship, and because also they have organized this counter-revolution, leading to the current situation of the Libyan people, the current situation of the Tunisian people, the current situation of the Syrian people. Here I would like to express my sadness. Mainly, what happened to the Syrian people is completely unacceptable. Now, you probably know that after this, this earthquake, you have about 5 to 6 million people, living in extremely bad conditions. This is why I think we have to think about this, and you have to really to support this part of the population, of the Arab population, in needing everything. So now, after 12 years, we have to accept that something didn't go, something went wrong, and we have to take responsibility. Of course, the other part are responsible because they have pushed, as I said, that the Arab revolution, the Arab people to revolt, and also because they have organized this counter-revolution, very costful in human lives, but we have to accept our responsibility. What happened, for instance, in Tunisia? Why, after this revolution, now we have a new dictatorship? Because what's happening in Tunisia is now that we are going back to a new dictatorship. Sometimes they say, hey, no, this is not like Ben Ali. It is worse than Ben Ali because, once again, you have one man having all the powers. And this is the definition of a dictatorship. A dictator is somebody who is the state, who feels that he's the state, and we have all powers. This is exactly what we have now in Tunisia. So what happened? What happened? Why I am now in political exile, sentenced to 4 years in prison? Why the former prime minister of Tunisia, who signed with me the constitution, is in prison, Ali Larif? Why so many people, who have been working for this country for decades and decades now in prison? What happened? And here I have to say that in my lifetime, I saw what I call an ideological wave I have seen the high and low tide of ideological wave, what I call ideological wave. It's political Islam, nationalism, pan-Arabism, democracy, are for me national ideological wave. I mean by ideological wave, a set of emotion, a set of belief, a set of illusion, with the promise that something will be okay if we abide with this ideology, then everything will be okay. For instance, you used to say, look, we are suffering. This is what my father and my grandfather used to say. If we are in this bad situation, it is because colonialism. So let's get rid of colonialism, and then everything will be okay. Let's have a national state, and then everything will be okay. The fact is that we have had this national state, and it didn't, okay. We have just, transferred the repression from the French colonialism to what I dare to call inner colonialism. And then, for many, many countries, it was the new mantra is to say, hey, we Arabs, we are divided and we are weak, so let's have, you know, a united Arab country, and then everything will be okay. And they have tried. The pan-Arabism have been tried in Syria, in Egypt, in Libya. It didn't work. And then, for some other people said, hey, everything will be okay if we apply Islam, if we go back to Islam, and then you have the wave of political Islam. And we know that the political Islam has been experienced in Saudi Arabia, in Sudan, in many countries, and it didn't go. We didn't solve any problem. And then in my generation, we used to say, hey, let's get rid of dictatorship, and then everything will be okay. Let's revert to democracy, and everything will be okay. And this is exactly what happened in our revolution. We believed that with democracy, everything will be okay, and then we will be free, and we will be, et cetera, et cetera. I can assure you that, be quite sure that I'm still a Democrat, and I will remain a Democrat. But what I have discovered when in charge of the country is that something I was extremely surprised by the fact that democracy in reality was in the benefit of the people who have fought against democracy. I was extremely surprised to see how easy it is to hijack the very tools of democracy to destroy democracy. This is what was extremely surprising for me. For instance, I gave you an example. I have been tried during the 80s and the 90s many times because I wrote books forbidden, because I wrote articles forbidden. So for me, freedom of expression was something like, you know, holy things. Freedom of expression it means liberty, freedom, dignity, etc., etc. What happened during the 3 years I was in charge is that the freedom of expression was used mainly by the people against democracy, and they used this freedom of expression to destroy me, to destroy the revolution, to disseminate false news, rumor, etc., etc. Freedom of association, we fought decades, you know, to have the right to have political parties. I have been sentenced to 1 year in prison under Ben Ali because I have, you know, without any permission, I said, I am going to have a political party and I accept whatever you want to do. But after the revolution, I said, not political parties, but what I would call, you know, political parties built overnight by corrupt politicians, and those corrupt politicians, you know, paying a lot of money, you know, to have political parties, and those political parties winning more seats in the parliament in election than my own party who fought for democracy for many years. What happened? What's the problem? How come that you have corrupt people, you know, using democracy to destroy democracy? And now I can assure you that the elections, you know, we were extremely surprised to see that people can elect somebody who's totally unknown, who hasn't done nothing to the country. So, the question is, what happened? Is it our fault, or is it something to do with democracy itself? This is what happened. This democracy has been destroyed in Tunisia by people using the tools of democracy. And using the tools of democracy, they restore a dictatorship. This is exactly what happened. Democracy gave to the anti-democrats the tools, you know, now we have a kind of populist dictatorship, and Tunisia is sinking. No more freedom of expression, no more freedom, etc., etc. And Tunisia is sinking economically, morally, psychologically, and not only politically. So, my question, the question in this book, is what's happened? Why my father and my grandfather believed in the myth of national states? Why a lot of people now still believe in pan-Arabism? Why did we believe in democracy? What's the problem? Why every time we're facing this dilemma that the dream of freedom, of dignity, etc. You begin with a dream and you end up with I wouldn't, not bad dream, but also kind of nightmare. Because what we are living now in Tunisia is really a nightmare. I never believed that I would see Tunisian, queuing for milk, queuing for bread, without any kind of hope, etc., and trying to flee the country and dying in the middle of the Mediterranean. This is a nightmare for me, because I have spent my whole life, more than 50 years, fighting for something else. And we end up with this situation. So this book is, first of all, it's kind of catharsis. I had to try to understand what happened. But also, it's, I always say that when you analyze a situation, you always see the destruction forces. I'm a physician, and I have also image coming from my medical experience. When you have disease, you would see the person suffering. You would see bubbles. You would see colors, different colors, etc. You would see tumors. You would see. So it's very easy, to see the destruction forces, but you never see the constructive forces within the body, that your body is trying to fight this disease, and what's something, it's miraculous what's happened in your own body, but you don't see it. And I think in politics it's the same thing. We see all of the destructive forces, but we never see the inner forces inside the society, trying to build up what's being destroyed. And this is exactly what's happening now in the Arab world. We see a lot of destruction, myth, ideology, political system, economy, etc. But behind the scene, I do believe that there is a new wave of hope, a new wave of construction. And this book is not only a matter of, making the diagnosis of the destructive forces, it's also a matter of trying to diagnose what's behind the scene and what can we learn from our ideology, from this disillusion. I think we can learn a lot. And in this book, I'm trying to say to the new generation, look, it seems that moving from the situation of a colonized society, weak society, poor society, to a society of citizens, to a rule of law, etc., it takes a generation. It takes a long time. It's not easy. So we are just part of this process. We have to accept that it will take a generation. You have to take responsibility. You have to accept that even if you see the destructive forces, you have to accept that it's just part of the problem. You have to accept that maybe the next generation maybe won't see what I dream of society like yours here in Germany. I hope it won't take that not so long, but I accept that it may be very long and very difficult. I always remember them that the Chinese or the European also they have had the same problems in the 19th century, and here in Europe it took you to wars, and more than 60 million people died before you reach this, this society, this democratic society. And unfortunately, we Arabs, we have to pay the same price, and it's a very high price. So, at the same time, I'm very objective by saying, look, we have done a lot of error in managing our democracy, but we have learned. So the next time when we will have a new revolution, we will have to defend democracy against the people, we will not be so naive, we have to accept that we have done a lot of mistakes in managing our democracy, but the next time, the next generation, I hope they will never commit the same error. So I hope, I don't know if Tunisian here can read this book, but they would see that In fact, it's a pessi-optimistic book. Pessi-optimistic, this is the very famous word of a Palestinian writer. He said, I'm not pessimistic, I am not optimistic, I am a pessi-optimistic. I think it's the most honest attitude that we have facing the complexity of the world. We cannot be optimistic and we cannot either be pessimistic. So this book is a pessi-optimistic book. It means that I am trying to see what didn't work in our revolution, but because once again, I do believe that we have constructive forces behind the destructive forces that we will improve our management of the next democracy. So yes, Mr. Zul said that you have been interested by this code, that maybe it's naive to try to change the world, but it's criminal not to try. This is what I do believe, and this is what everybody should believe, because it's criminal not to try. So please keep trying, even if it's extremely difficult. Thank you.
So, talking about the Middle East and talking about what's going to happen there in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, we cannot separate it from Europe. And we come back to this, I think so. And talking about the Middle East and talking about Europe, we have to make it clear that we are talking of two utopias. Two utopias, that means that there is the utopia of the new Middle East after what has happened in the past, and the other utopia is Europe. We need a different Europe which takes responsibility with regard to its neighborhood in the Middle East, the Arab countries, Turkey. So this is the way we are talking about utopias, and the challenge is how to make a topos, from an utopos, a non-topos, how to make a new reality. And from this point of view, I think you have made a couple of very, very interesting points in your book. But before entering the discussion, I would like to ask you, you have dedicated your book to 3 persons. Yeah. And I shall name the persons, and you will tell us a little bit about the persons. Yeah. These 3 names. I just, Abdurrahman al-Kawakibi, Abdelaziz Sa'alibi, wa Abdul Karim al-Khattabi. So these 3 are, this is a dedication. So what do you mean by that? Who are those guys? They are historians, they are politicians, they are theorists, they are fighters. Here.
Well, first of all, let me respond to your first remark, because it's extremely important when you say that the problem in the Middle East is also the problem of Europe. You know, if you consider that the far right is probably the most important danger for democracy in Europe for the moment, because democracy is also in danger, not everywhere. I consider that democracy is threatened here in Europe by the rise of the far right. And you see that the far right is rising everywhere, in Italy, in Poland, in France, etc. So what's the main, the source of the power of this far right? It's mainly fear of immigration, and mainly fear immigration from the Arab world, from the Muslim world. So why do we have so many people immigrating from this country? It's because of the instability, it's because of the economic failure, it's because of dictatorship, etc., etc. So what would happen is you will have a kind of, growing this fear here in Europe of the immigration. So the government here would respond to this fear by, I would say, I would probably not here in Germany, but in another country, putting more repression on their citizens coming from overseas, and then also because they believe that dictatorship are much more interesting for the stability than protecting the dictatorship in our countries. The dictatorship protected in our countries by your government here in Europe would increase the repression, increase the corruption, and then you will have a new wave of revolution, a new wave of instability, a new wave of migration coming to Europe, then a rising fear in Europe, etc., etc. This is how we see the link between, the weaknesses of democracy here in your country and the fate of democracy in ours. We are linked together. If you want here, to have a stable democracy, this is what I'm telling to the European politician. In fact, if you have to accept that our countries also deserve democracy, and that the democracy is the best way to protect your democracy. I think this must be said everywhere. And now to respond to the question. Kawakibi is my master, my professor, because he wrote the first book in the Arab history against dictatorship. This book is very famous, في طبائع الاستبداد, which means about the nature of dictatorship. And he was poisoned, he died. It was in the 19th century. And we Arab Democrats, we have learned from this man, from this book, the basis of our faith in fighting dictatorship. We didn't learn, because in our country, many people who say, hey, you are Westerner, etc. You are just here, to promote Western values. I always say, no, I'm not promoting Western values. I am promoting universal values. And those universal values, we have somebody in our Arab culture, Kawakibi, said everything we need to fight against dictatorship.
Thank you very much, first of all. And I'm very happy to have you in Berlin today and to discuss with you your book and your issues about the Arab world. Of course, the Sudan is also fighting since a very long time, but what's very interesting for me now is to ask, we have Tunisian as one of the very significant examples in the Arab world that they have one of the best democratic constitutions. We had the beginning of the revolution in Tunisia. We had so many steps, which was very significant. But now the situation getting, again, very complicated. And the Arab world is also getting very complicated. So I just want to know from you, what do you think, what's going to happen right now? Is there any new ideas that we are going to follow? Because you say that we have to continue fighting for democracy. At the same time, you say that we apologize always, that when we have failure, that when we have dictatorship, that because of the colonialism or because of the nationalism or because of any other things. So what's your point of view? How can we have new ideas? Now you are also in exile after very few years of democracy, and now Tunis is getting in a new way. So can you give us new ideas?
In 2014, after everybody was quite sure that what the so-called Arab Spring is over, everybody. At that time, you remember that you have the coup in Egypt, and then you have the comeback of the former speaker of Ben Ali as president in Tunisia, and you have Libya also was in civil war, Syria was in civil war, and everybody was talking to me, look, forget about this Arab Spring, it's over. And they said, no, you have seen the first wave, and then you are going to see the second wave. And the second wave began in Sudan, in Algeria with the Iraq, in Iraq. And now people are saying, look, didn't work in Algeria, you know. The Iraq is over, and in Sudan, even in Sudan, they are protesting, they are taking to the street every day, etc., but nothing changed. Look what happened in Lebanon. I said, no, be careful. You would have 3 waves, etc. My conviction is, first let me tell you that I have always, I didn't like the image of Arab Spring, because it's a false image. When you talk about spring, you talk about, you know, happy things, you know. No, what happened in this period of time was had nothing to do with the spring, you know. It's bloody, cruel events that happened mainly in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, etc. The best image for me would be the volcano. This is what happened. What happened in 2011 was the first explosion of some volcanoes, the Tunisian volcano, the Libyan volcanoes, etc. Why did you have this explosion of these volcanoes? Because inside a volcano, inside the volcano, you have a pressure, pressure of gases, you pressure of material, etc., etc. And then when you have this pressure is extremely high, then you have the explosion. And as in politics, it's like in geology, you know, the geologists do know that you will have the explosion, but they never know when it will happen. It's like earthquake. So what happened in Tunisia, the volcano was extremely, the pressure was so high that it had to explode. And it exploded. Now the same thing would happen in all the Arab countries, because we have the same ingredients, which means that in Egypt now you have poverty, you have the lack of chances for, look, we have about 100 million young people with no hope of marrying, having job, nothing. Imagine how dangerous the situation is. So this is why I say, those guys, you know, they think that by the counter-revolution they will stop the process. They will stop anything. We are going to have a new explosion, and the more we wait, the more the explosion would be much more violent. So what's happened in Tunisia is exactly what happened in Algeria. Okay, the counter-revolution won a battle, but we are going to win the war, because the counter-revolution is totally unable, you know, to solve the economic problem, the social problem, etc. And the volcano, once again, we would have the mounting of the pressure, and the volcano would explode. So expect for the new years, the coming years, that we will have a lot of explosion, and maybe Tunisia in the next, I wouldn't say next few days, but the next few months, this is going to happen.
I fully agree. And this is what is my optimism, pessimism, optimism, but that's why I find your book more optimistic than pessimistic. Forward-looking, the change is going to come. And I think that if we consider the history of the Arab world, not only the Arabs in the Middle East, but particularly the Arabs, we must not start in 2011. And I never called this the Arab Spring. I found it the worst thing to talk. I thought, always spoke about the third Arab revolt. The first Arab revolt was during the First World War, and afterwards against the French and the British. The second Arab revolt was under Nasser and the Ba'athists. They ended up in a different way, and now we are in a phase which we might call the third Arab revolt. They just started, and it's going on. So, but what are the conditions under which we may think of a new Arab order, Middle Eastern order, in terms of political systems, for example? You are criticizing democracy. What is the alternative to the democracy which you had? I think that it's not only the democratic or institutions, it is the state concept itself that has to be reconsidered. The national state centered on nationalism is a thing of the past, I think. So how do you deal with minorities, with religious minorities, with ethnic minorities? That's one thing. And the second perspective is, I think, the Arab world at large. Even a country, nation state, if you want to, like Tunisia, cannot separate from the fate of the Arabs totally. I think that was when the Arab League was ousted from Cairo, it was received in Tunisia. So was the PLO. So there are certain things, parameters, which have to change and which we have to face and think about what are the new parameters towards which we are moving.
About democracy, once again, I'm criticizing the fact that we didn't manage the transition to democracy. We were a little bit naive, a little bit, idealistic. We didn't see how dangerous the tools of democracy can be used against us. Which doesn't mean that I don't believe in freedom of expression, in freedom of association, in election at all. I do believe. I think that, but I think the next time we will, if I can give advice to some political activists, etc., be very careful. When you have the new revolution, be very careful because the guys will never, the counter-revolution will never accept you, and you have to protect our democracy. You have to mainly against corruption, against corrupt politicians, against corrupt money coming from outside, to corrupt your democracy. You have to take measures. You have to have strong laws, to protect your democracy. So this is probably the most important lesson. It's not absolutely about saying, no, we don't want democracy at all. This is what some people would say, but I don't say that. I totally disagree with people saying democracy is over. Fortunately, I would say, what happened in Egypt, in Tunisia, is, I would say, something good for the future. Why? Because Tunisia, people voted for this guy, knowing anything about him, just because they were afraid, because they were disgusted with the corruption of democracy, because unfortunately we didn't move from a corrupt dictatorship to a true democracy. We moved from a corrupt dictatorship to a corrupt democracy. And the people were disgusted with this corruption in democracy, and this is why they voted. This is why the populist wave now is extremely strong, because people would say, fed up with the politician, let's vote for somebody else. This is how the populists everywhere, not only in Tunisia, are succeeding. But now they see the difference. Now the Tunisians see the difference. Even under when I was president, this democracy was imperfect, was weak democracy, was not strong democracy. And of course, after my departure, then the corruption went worse and worse and worse. But at least they see the difference, that under the democracy they had at least freedoms, dignity, etc. They have lost everything now, and they didn't gain anything else. In Egypt, it's the same thing. The alternative to the democracy, even it was an imperfect democracy, the alternative was the dictatorship of a Sisi, and they see the difference. So this is why I still believe that even if at the beginning the people were a little bit disappointed with democracy, now they see the difference and they can say, look, maybe even if it was a weak democracy, it could be corrected, and then we could, and this is my opinion, we can go forward, we can improve this democracy, and then we can impose it, because it's the only way, to go forward.
Thank you for these words. But I want to ask you, you was on power, and right now we are talking about democracy. I just want to quote one woman of Sudan, Mrs. Fatma Ahmed Ibrahim, who said always, if you don't feed the people, so you don't have either democracy or politics. So you have to feed the people. And I wanted to talk about the issue where you was on power. What about the economical problems there? So you said now people had some freedom, and even we saw the issue of freedom in the Arab world, but the main issue is the economic in Tunisia. What did you do through your time? What was the obstacles facing you through that time? Because right now we have about 15% of unemployment in Tunisia. We have a lack of GDP, maybe about 40%, as if the statistics are correct, of 2021, and we have so many corruption in the land. Can you explain a little bit for us? Thank you.
You know, we're not idiots. We knew from the beginning that if we do not improve the economic situation, it won't hold. We knew that. I knew that, mainly because personally I was professor of public health. I worked on the field for more than 20 years on the public health field. I saw how poor the Tunisians are. I worked in once again in the poor village, etc. So I was extremely sensitive to the problem of poverty. And I come also from a poor family, so poverty was my main obsession. And from the beginning, I said to everybody, look, we have to have a plan, a program, you know, to relieve as many Tunisians as we can from poverty. And we have had, under my presidency, a program about lifting 2 million Tunisians from poverty in 5 years. And I remember that I sent some of my counselors to Brazil because they have had a very good experience of, you know, fighting against poverty by a new economic method, etc. I were extremely interested in the experience of Brazil. But the problem is that in 3 years we had to face the counter-revolution, we had to face terrorist attacks. We have to face the corruption, the corrupt media attacking the revolution every day. We didn't have enough time, you know, to improve the economic situation. Imagine that every day. I can assure you that during the 3 years I was in power, I wasn't sure that, you know, I would see that the next month I could be assassinated. I could have a coup. I had a coup. So the situation was extremely difficult. Once again, there is another problem. Political instability. During the period of transition, the political instability is extremely harmful to the economy because the people will never invest when you have a political instability. And when you move from dictatorship to democracy, you have this political instability. And your enemy would use this instability they are creating to say, hey, we are not capable to deliver the necessary things to the population. Unfortunately, when I left the power, the new government, they had everything, you know, they have everything, they have the stability, they have everything. In 5 years, they had done anything because it was a corrupt democracy, and corruption never goes with social and economic development. So, yes, we were aware of the fact, but once again, because of this political instability, because of the attacks of the counter-revolution, etc., we didn't deliver.
There had been a commission of reconciliation in Tunisia. What happened to it? I mean, I ask it as this is a very important question in terms of the future of any society in the Middle East. How to reconcile the people of different ethnic origin, ethnic religions, and so on and so forth. Be it Syria, be it Iraq, be it Tunisia, be it any other country, be it Sudan, of course. Yeah.
In Tunisia, we didn't have the problem of ethnic minority, etc. Right. Tunisia is very homogeneous society. Tunisia, 99% of Tunisians are Arab, Muslim, Sunni, Malikite. You cannot have more than, but it's very, very homogeneous. This is why probably Tunisia has a little bit more chances, you know, to build up a strong democracy. About the reconciliation, this is what we said to the former government, etc. We want a peaceful transition. We want reconciliation. We are not going to revenge, etc. And we were wrong. We were wrong. It was stupid. This is why we have lost, I think Tunisia has lost 10 years of it. Because when you have a revolution, I'm sorry to say that you have to be very tough with the criminals. Imagine that the perpetrator, the people who have tortured Tunisians, thousands of Tunisians, you know, they felt very secure, you know, well, we have a president who is a human rights activist. He will never dare to, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it was. This is why I'm not going to say that we have to take revenge, the next revolution, et cetera, but I think we have to be tough, and that criminals should be prosecuted, and we have to forget about the fact that I can assure you that if you have prosecuted 100 or 200 people of the perpetrated responsible of torture, of corruption, etc., maybe maybe I won't be here with you here as you know, as a political exile. I think democracy has also to have, you know, to be a strong democracy. Otherwise, my experience is that the people, you know, you have in front of you, first they will never accept you, they will never forgive you. They think that power is their own, and that you are kind of you know, a newcomer, and that you don't have the right to do anything, etc. So I will never accept. Let me tell you that I was responsible of the transition justice. I went to South Africa in 1991 to study this you know, this process, and I dreamed of something like this in Tunisia. And we did have this transitional justice, and the result of which is we have a good report of what happened, but the perpetrator, the people who tortured thousands of Tunisians, never have been, you know, annoyed or something, and this is not correct.
Well, I haven't. Would you add something?
I don't want to add something, but I want to enjoy maybe new words from Dr. Marzouki, and I would like to open the floor for the people so they can engage and maybe talk about the challenges which are facing us right now in the Arab world or worldwide maybe, and very interesting to talk with him.
Well, probably we take another 5 minutes or 10 minutes before opening to the floor. I think there's one really major aspect which you have to discuss, and this is the role of religion. If I remember correctly, paragraph 1 in the constitution of Tunisia, the new constitution, was Islam is a religion of the state. But then I think it was, after all, a secular constitution. So how do you relate Islam, religion, to the political system, the political institutions?
The discussion about the most difficulty when making the constitution was not the word Islam, it was the word Sharia. Because our friends of Nada wanted the word Sharia to be part of the constitution. And I knew that the secularist part of the population would never accept, because when you put the word Sharia, it means that all the laws must derive from the Sharia, which is unacceptable for the secularist party of the population. And I remember I have had a lot of discussion with Rashid Ghannouchi, a lot of discussion with many people. And I told Ghannouchi, look, if you want this constitution to be adopted, you have to accept that we don't put the word Sharia. And he said, okay, but we have to stick to the word Islam, the religion of the state. I said, no, it's no problem, because of course Tunisian 99% of Tunisians are Muslim. It doesn't mean anything. And this is how we escape this difficulty, because even if we have this word Islam, the religions of the state, in fact, the Tunisian is a secular country, because the laws are not derived from the Sharia, from the religions. The status of women is secularist, is not religious. And the way dealing with a lot of problems are, once again, secularist laws and not religious law.
There's one single point which I would like to add. In your book, you strongly criticize the West and external forces for, you know, standing up against democratization, against change, and supporting the tyrants. So it seems that this is a little bit exaggerated. It seems that you turned away the responsibility for what's happened from the people to the international community.
No. When I said the West, I didn't say the West. I said West government and some West government. I have always said that if I am still alive, it is because I have been protected by Amnesty International in the 90s and the Human Rights Watch, etc., etc. During the battle for democracy, during the 90s and the 80s, the Tunisian society and the Arab society was backed by the Western civil society. But the government of countries like France, like Italy, like Spain, like United States, all these governments were backing the dictatorship for many reasons, for 3 reasons mainly. I remember some of the senior political, in very good position. I mean, he told me, look, we are going to, at the time, I was the head of the Tunisian Human Rights League, and I was complaining the fact that the government of countries like, like United Kingdom, etc., are backing dictatorship. And they told me, look, as far as human beings are concerned, like you, etc., our states will always intervene for persons. But for strategic reason, for political reason, we don't have the choice. We have to back the dictatorship for 3 reasons. He said 3 reasons. First reason, stability. Second reason, economy. Third reason, normalization with Israel. Because those are the 3 main objectives of the Western government from the Arab government. They want normalization, they want economy, and then buying weapons, etc. And they want the so-called stability, which means that you keep your people inside your country, inside your prison, and you let them go in our country. And this is the reality. This is what I have said. When we in Tunisia, I expected that, this is a newborn, this is the first democratic regime in the Arab world, etc. I expected that we will be helped, etc. In fact, no. And I was extremely surprised to see that the coup in Egypt was very well accepted by everybody. And Sisi is now, he's welcome everywhere at any time, while everybody knows that in Egypt you have more than 60,000 people in prison, in jail. No problem to make any business with the Saudi, with the Emiratis, and unfortunately this is, I think it's due to once again, the very mechanism of democracy sometimes can be harmful to the democracy, because you have here, in this country, you have politicians elected for, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, 10 years. And those politicians, because they are kept in the short-term policy, for them, it's more important now to deal with the dictatorship that they are in position, to impose their so-called stability, than to think about the result of this politics in 20 years, in 30 years, in the next 30. And this is exactly what's happening. And it's once again, it's sad for your democracy, dangerous for your democracy in the long term, as it is dangerous for our democracy, for our nascent democracy.
Shall we open the floor for questions from the audience? We have these mean little neutral things, 2 minutes per question, so as many as possible of you can get the chance to ask a question. I will keep a list and we will get the microphone from so many. Okay, I will start from here to there. Amani, can I have one of the microphones, please? And der Mann im Braun da hinten. Yeah. Can you raise your hand again? Yes. And this, by the way, is Dr. Amani El-Saifi. She is on the board with me. My name is Cora Josting, and we are currently the board of the Imrush Fund. So, sorry. Yes, right. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to ask 2 questions quickly. First one, are we as an Arab world, and especially in Tunisia, infatuated with an idea of like a strong man ruling, a man with an iron fist? Because like you go on the ground, you talk with the people, and everyone was at least happy until recently with the economic situation going bad. And the second one, to latch on into the economic situation question, during the first and second elections, there seemed to be a lot of diversity in terms of political ideology of the parties, but no one presented an economic background. They inherited some sort of way of doing economics from the previous regime, but nobody really tried to change anything in terms of development, in terms of the exchange rate regime that we have in Tunisia that lasted on for like the decade afterwards. So what do you think about that? And thank you.
Well, the strong man, it's not in Tunisia, everybody. Look, even in the United States, you know, you have more than 40% of the population voting for this horrible man, Trump. So part of the population everywhere in the world, you know, they are looking for the strong man, thinking that this strong man is able, you know, to solve the problem. Democracy is the solution to this problem, because for me, if we have been destroyed, we, the Arabs, it's because of the strong man. Look what's happened to the Iraqi people. It was because of the strong man named Saddam Hussein. Once he awake, he decided that he is going to invade Iraq, and you see what happened after the invasion in Iraq. What's happened to the Syrian people? Is it because of the strong man like Assad, etc.? So, if we want, you know, to get rid of this kind of catastrophe, we don't have the choice. We have to impose the state law of order, the state of law and institution. It's a long fight, but we have to explain to the population. Now, for the moment, look, they have their strong men. The Tunisians, they have strong men. But let me be sure that in 2 or 3 years, if this guy is still in power, that they will change their mind and they will understand that how difficult, how dangerous it is to rely on the strong man. Strong man is the best way to go to the catastrophe. Now, for the economy, you said that nobody has. I told you that during my mandate, we had this new approach of fighting against poverty. I fought against, you know, the IMF, who wanted to impose me a lot of things, etc. But because, don't forget that once again, I came from the social democracy, or from the left wing of the democratic movement, I was extremely interested in having a new model, etc. But once again, the counter-revolution was extremely fierce against us because we wanted to change the economic model. Where do we think that those people got their money? They got their money from the corrupt people that wanted to keep the same political system, to keep the same economy. And now they are in charge of the country, and they are ruining the country.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Ismail. I am a German-Palestinian citizen. I appreciate very much the speech of Dr. Benghazi. My question is regarding the internal forces where you are talking about, which could shift the development now, the democracy process in Tunisia, in the right direction, not in the way which is now being pushed by the current president. And the second question is,
Excuse me, can you be more precise? Because I didn't understand exactly what you mean. Internal forces, can you be precise?
You were describing the disease of democracy in Tunisia, and you were telling us about the outside characteristic of such disease, but there was something inside the society, inside the Tunisian society, forces which could guarantee and sustain the development of democracy in the right direction. Because this is, I think, very interesting for us as Arab intellectual when we talk about things which taking place in other Arab countries where we can learn from the Tunisian experience. This is the first part of my question. The second, is clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah.
The second part, I am concerned about if there was any intervention in the which supporting the other side, which try to get rid of the democracy in Tunisia. I'm thinking about, for example, Saudi Arabia is one of the major forces in the Arab world, and the former president, he escaped in Saudi Arabia, and he's now protected there. And if there's any intervention from such countries in the Arab countries or other countries which try to push the democracy development in Tunisia in another way. Thank you very much.
I will begin by the second question because it's probably the most important question. Look, the game now, the process of democratization is no longer a national issue. I mean, it's promoting democracy in Tunisia would never be possible if you have Algeria plotting against you, if you have the Saudi Arabia, if you have Emirati, etc., etc. Now, I would say, it's a systemic problem. It's the regional powers, mainly Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirati, they have decided in the 2011 that they had to stop. They had to do everything to stop this revolution because it could be extremely dangerous. So we have to think that for the moment, the process is no longer national, it is regional. And then secondly, it's international, but mainly it's regional, because what struck me during my mandate is that, in fact, the European and the American, they didn't play any role, no, not promoting, not defending. The regional power, mainly Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they have played the most important role, to stop the process. Algeria also played an important role to stop the process. This is why I think now for the moment, I'm trying, to set up a kind of Arab network of different countries working together, because we do know that we are not going to face in Egypt, just the Egyptian counter-revolution. In Tunisia, just the Tunisian counter-revolution, but we will face regional powers fighting against us. Now, what are the new forces that we can rely on, to promote democracy, to defend democracy? It's probably a very, very difficult question, because I was very surprised to see, for instance, that people who should be with us were against us, mainly the secularists in Tunisia, the middle class, the secularists should be with the democratic process. And we find that they backed the counter-revolution, and now they are backing the populist wave, mainly by hatred of the Islamists. This is also the burden, the Islamist movement is a burden on our shoulders, because this Islamist movement, in fact, was not very important, factor to promote democracy. That the party Ennahda, made a lot of consensus, a lot of arrangement with the dictatorship, with et cetera, and then because of the Islamists, we have a part of the society, even siding by the dictatorship, fearing the Islamists. And my job and the job of people like me is to try to say, look, the divide is must not be between Islamists and secularists. It must be people with democracy and people against democracy. So I am expecting a new kind of consensus, within the middle class and the new generation, to understand that the enemy is not Islamist, the enemy is dictatorship. When this would be accepted, then we will have enough forces, to go forward.
Just a point, at the same time a question related to what you said. I'm amazed that you do not mention civil society as an actor in the future. It was Tunisia, 4 civil society organizations who were awarded with the Peace Nobel Prize. So I think that was the strongest force that eventually brought about the change. We see it now, people in other countries. We see it in Sudan. We see it in Iran, which is not an Arab country, but very dynamic society in terms of revolutions and change and so on. So we even see it in Saudi Arabia, the women. So I think that if we envisage what's going to come in the future in the Middle East, we have to make the point that civil society is a major force.
I come from the civil society. I was, once again, chair of the Tunisian Human Rights League that played an important role against dictatorship during the 90s, and I paid a heavy price. I was sacked from my job as professor at the university. I was in prison. I was prevented from leaving the country, etc. At that time, during the 80s and the 90s, there was a real civil society in Tunisia. What I call civil society is an organization, you know, funded by people themselves. We funded our activities, and we were very few. We were 5 or I would say 6 major organizations: women organization, maybe the human rights organization, lawyers organization, etc. Very few. This was real, genuine civil society. What happened after the revolution is that, as we have had more than 200 political parties, we saw a huge amount of new organization funded by the European, funded by the American, and those associations, I wouldn't say that all of them are corrupt, because it's not true. Many of them are working hard, but unfortunately, I can tell you that corruption is now as widespread in civil society as in political party, and this is very dangerous, and this is very sad for me.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. I don't want to ask about the reality, because I know that the reality is very bad, very, very bad. I would like to ask rather about, or that I want to escape into the world of ideas. I have read your book,
Yeah.
And you have referred in your book to a special relation between the state and the politics. Could you please tell us what do you mean with this special relation between state, الدولة والسياسة? Thank you very much.
Oh, this is a very difficult question. I would need, you know, hours and hours. Oh, I see. It's a very difficult question. What I say that for the moment in our countries, the state has been hijacked by the corrupt and brutal elite, using the state for its own interest and using the state, you know, to oppress the people, and that the objective of the revolution is, you know, to take back the state, you know, so the state would be an instrument, you know, use it for the benefit of the population. And this is, I think that historically we are moving from what I call Sha'b al-Ra'aya, which means the people of subjects, to the people of citizens, which means that by citizens I mean people who are never give up any of their right, but also able, you know, to take responsibility, to do their duties. We are moving from this subject who are giving up their rights and not taking responsibility in any case, to the people of citizens, and moving from the state, hijacked now by the corrupt elite, to the state, law of order and institution. Look, I always say that in the Arab countries we have two kind of situation. You have people who have, you know, armies. We have, you know, and you have armies who have states. In Egypt, in Algeria, for instance, the state is owned by the army. So it's much more difficult for the Algerian and for the Egyptian, for the Syrian, you know, to get their second independence. I call the democracy, I call the second independence, because the state is not only hijacked by the corrupt elite, it's under the control of the army itself. So this is the process of our liberation. We have to liberate ourselves from our state. I always say that we have got the independence from the foreigner state, but now we have to fight for the second independence, which is to be freed from our own national state. This is my opinion, and I think this is the process is going on. Very difficult. It's a very difficult process, but this process is going on, and I think things are improving generation after the generation, because once again, this is a matter of generation. It's not a matter of, you know, lifetime, like one of me.
Hi, my name is Mustafa. I come from Egypt, and I really relate to what you said about unsuccessful democracy in the first wave. And we're kind of determined to this because maybe our society is not well developed like European, like civil society, workers' union, and political parties and it become like vicious circle. Maybe in Egypt it's more difficult than Tunisia, but whenever you have people angry, and now you have, which would happen in Arab Spring, you have a chance to implement in democracy. But then with the first economic turmoil, you completely lose people's mind, and people don't trust, because you don't have basis for a balanced society with different powers that can control and balance a good democracy. And I mean, you come from a background very, very unique, that you did the politics to the end, you're intellectual, and you've seen this deep state control over a country. And what is a way out of this vicious circle? Whenever you have people angry, you're not ready for democracy. And when you can get ready for democracy, when you can implement this, that's the question.
Well, during more than 3 decades, I have heard this, this mantra: we are not ready for democracy. And I always said, look, we have to begin. You have to begin somewhere, sometimes, so we can learn from and this is what's happening now. We have begun this process, after the revolution. I'm sure that the Tunisians now, they realize that they were wrong in electing corrupt people in the parliament, the last parliament. I'm quite sure that they are realizing that they have also, made a mistake in electing this man. The saying, you have heard the saying, he's very popular. Yes, he was very popular, but he's now less and less and less popular, because the people are realizing that, the link between the dictatorship he's now, setting and the economic situation. So we have to learn. Even here in Germany, which is a developed country, etc., don't forget they have elected Hitler. Hitler was elected. Don't forget that the Italian people, which also civilized people, they have elected Mussolini. So why do you want the Tunisian, not to make error, to invent? We have to give the people the time, and we have to give them the right to the error, because people like human beings, they learn from their errors. If you prevent them from making the error, how could they make their own experience? That's stupid. So we have, once again, this is why I told you that we have to accept that it's a matter of generation. Here in Germany or in Italy, they didn't become in once, developed Democrat, etc. This country, they have paid a very, very heavy price, even heavy, more cost for them we have paid. Yeah, sorry. So once again, we don't have to despise our people, or to you say, well, these people are stupid, they are not, etc., etc. This is the worst way of thinking. We have to accept that people have to learn. They have to learn from their errors. That we have to be patient. That we have to keep the track, our own dream on the track, and never give up.
I'm here.
Okay.
It will be very short question.
Yes,
It will be very short question. It will be very short. First of all, I want to tell Mr. Marzouki that I respect him so much as a human activist. I'm Tunisian, and I always respect you. And I'm so thankful for you today, because you said you were wrong to not make those criminals accountable. And we were suffering, like as youth, from 2011 to 2019, as we were seeing that, and we didn't see anyone accountable for what they did for us. My question is short. What do you think about the current opposition in Tunisia? Do we really have an opposition? We don't have that strong opposition that was, for example, in Ben Ali area. Do you think that we will be having an alternative if we will be coming back to democracy again, and we will advocate for our democracy? Like the current situation is so bad, so what do you think about it, and what do you think about the opposition?
And you, what do you think about it? It's you.
For me,
it's up to you, the new generation, to solve the problem. It's not to me.
But
I
we
have
need
paid the
advice
price.
from what you
No. I refuse to respond to it, because, you know, I hate, excuse me, but I hate this, the fate of people telling, hey, you politician, you have done look, I am not a politician. I am a citizen working, you know, to promote. And you, what have you done? And what are you going to do for Tunisia? So I don't want it. I accept, you know, I take responsibility. I accept it, but I don't accept, you know, to see that I have to give somebody things to somebody. They have to take their freedom themselves. They have to take the street themselves. They have to promote their democracy themselves. I'm just one of them. I'm not this leader. I am one of them. Just this. Okay. Excuse me. I have been a little bit brutal with you, but really, because sorry. Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult for men like me, you know, to be accused all the time. You have always people, you know, saying, you have done this, you have done this, you didn't do this, you didn't. Oh, come on, shut up. You, what have you done for this country? This is our country. It's not my country. I don't have to do the job myself. We have to do the job ourselves. So when everybody is sure that he's doing his job, then he can. I would accept that he would make critics. But you know, having been criticized all the time by people who have done nothing for the country, this is extremely, you know, harmful, and I don't like it. Sorry.
Okay, so I would like to take down, there are the two ladies in the back, and then there is a man in the front, there is another. So I will say, I'm keeping the list, so it's better if you don't, you know, because otherwise, so it's the two women in the back, then it's the man here in the front, then the woman with the beige scarf, and the woman in front of her, and the man in gray. Right, okay. Okay, let's start with the two women in the back, and then the gentleman in the front, because he's been waiting for a long time.
Hello, first of all, thank you very much for being here and taking the time to give this presentation. And I also wanted to greet you from my dad, who couldn't be here today, but he's a big fan of yours. So my question is, since you've already talked about the internationally leaning towards the far right, in terms of a revolution, how can we deal with this far right in a way that it doesn't further radicalize, and in a way that the revolution doesn't escalate?
You are talking about the far right here in this country, or everywhere? I
mean, in general, but
in general.
But when you're talking about a revolution in Indonesia, for example.
Well, it's I don't know how old are you, but I think you are young people, and I think the fact that the wrong people go to the polls, this is one of the way, you know, to stop the far right, because unfortunately the far right is much linked to the, you know, to the older age. So I think the young people should be involved in politics, because they are really the barrier against the far right. This is my opinion, especially here in this country. In Tunisia, I always know that many young people, you know, are disappointed with politics and saying, hey, politics is nothing. You know, the worst thing I can hear is all politicians are corrupt. I'm not interested in politics. I want to be independent, etc. And those people, you know, this way of thinking is extremely harmful because it means that you give up. It means that you let the corrupt people, you know, govern the country and decide of your future. The most important thing, once again, is to repoliticize the youth. If we succeed to repoliticize the youth, then maybe democracy has a chance everywhere. Not only in our country, but even here.
I think you are totally right, because I was scandalized when I saw that I did have political science at school, and now my daughter didn't, and I thought that was really bad. So, but it's the woman next to her.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry to hear that. First of all, thank you very much. My question kind of ties in with the last one, but it's, in my opinion, always easy to say, oh, the other side is wrong. I'm personally, of course, an advocate for democracy, and I consider myself, I fall like within the left. But in my opinion, it's kind of always easy to say, oh, the far right, you know, nationalists, of course. And yes, that holds true in certain things, but I think that there must be a reason why they were able to win so many votes. Of course, like if you're talking about the Middle East, despite propaganda, but even here in Europe, it seems that they have managed to win over workers or everyone within really the labor and the working class. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think that as people who are advocating for democracy, what do you think we did wrong? And how do you think that we can improve? Thank you.
Well, it's a very good question, because I do believe that you have always to take into account what the others are thinking. At last, they are human beings like you and like me, and they have their own hopes. They have their own illusion, etc. But at the same time, we cannot accept, because you know, we cannot accept that because they have problem, they would revert to violence, to hate, etc., etc. This we should say no. We can talk, but you know, I'm not going to accept that you are, you know, racism, hatred, etc., etc. So it's you have to stick by your own values. You have to understand the other, but you have to fight also for your own values. Otherwise, you know, this guy, for many, many reasons, some of reasons are rational, some are irrational, you know, they will bring you back a new dictatorship, and then you will suffer. So you have to stick by your own values, and you have to fight for them.
But I just want to ask you in this point, because maybe the Sudan was really starving for so many years, and we have so bad economic problems in the country. And at that time, we talked with some politicians here in Germany that people are hungry and we have to have some solutions there. And we had very significant answer from one politician, it was very big, even right now, that we cannot support because there is war in Sudan. And now we see in the EU that there is war, but there is support also. But in our countries where there is some problem, there is no support. So how can we turn this balance that we can have also support even if there is some problems? How can the EU change its mind that these countries needs really a partnership and not only a matter of supporting, giving money for these people. No, they don't want money. They want a real support for the democracy, for the civil society, for the system, for the institutions, where you also help to make them in power. So how can we have friends, real friends?
So let me express my admiration, my great admiration to the Sudanese people. You cannot really, if you follow what's happening in this region, you would see that the Sudanese, you know, they are in the street for more than 2 years.
So no, 19, from 19 to now.
It's amazing. It's amazing. This is really it's one of the poorest Arab people. But in fact, it's one of the most strong. And I see that really, I'm seeing the birth of what I call the people of citizens. Young people, they have the repression the Sudanese people, the Sudanese youth has experienced it during it's amazing, but they are still in this. It's really, I have a great, great admiration to the Sudanese people, and I think he's literally giving the good example to what should be done in our country. So, probably you know that this song, Stand Up for Your Right, Don't Give Up for Your Right, this very famous song of Bob Marley. Every time, when I see the Sudanese, I remember this song. Those guys, they are, obeying this order of coming from Bob Marley, stand up for your right, don't give up right. Now, what would happen? I think this very strong people of citizens will impose a kind of solution. I think that the army and the corrupt people would give up because they have to deal with these people revolting for more than 3 years, all the time from 2019. Now, what could be done with the European? Fortunately, I don't know. I don't know if they would realize that it's in their interest, in their own interest now to promote, to change their mind, to change the way they're dealing with our problems, that, relieving the people of our debt. The debt is extremely harmful for any kind of economic development. Understanding that by promoting democracy and development, in fact, they are promoting their own security, etc. If they change their mind, maybe there will be a kind of new help, but for the moment, I don't see, unfortunately, this kind of change in politics.
So now we have this gentleman in blue in the front, and then the woman with the beige scarf, and the gentleman in gray, and I think then we have to wrap it up. Yeah, so many more questions. We also have some food waiting. Yes, it's you, and then you, and then you. And, sorry? Yeah. Or
okay, yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe you can ask your question
Yes,
very shortly, and
be
we
very brief.
take the questions together.
Okay.
Yours, and yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Firstly, thank you to be here in Berlin, Germany. I think you are not only a political man, but also an aspiration for generation of Tunisia. And one of the most important moment or inspiration that I heard from you was before the revolution. As you spoke about the situation in Tunisia, and then you spoke about two possibilities. First possibility is a revolution as an explosion and an implosion. That means the society will implode in itself and nothing will happen and corruption will go further. My question will be, do you think we are currently in the situation of implosion? And, sorry? Okay. Then, okay.
I'm sure of nothing.
Yeah, the question is, do you think if we...
Have you already answered? No.
Yeah, the question is...
The question is whether we were going to have an implosion or explosion. I don't know. Nobody knows. Because once again, it's like politics is like, archaeology or geology. You know that something would happen. You know that there would be explosion, but you don't know when and why. I can assure you that in 2010, everybody was telling me that, this Tunisian people, you forget about it, this Tunisian people will never revolt, etc., etc. And then, you know what happened. So for the moment, people would say, look, Tunisian, they are doing nothing, etc. But tomorrow morning, you can, maybe something would happen, maybe something in 2 or 3 months. But what I am sure of is that we are going in the good direction. We are experiencing what all these people in Europe, they have experienced. We are making our own experience, and we are improving our capabilities, you know, to build up a new society. And you have to be confident. This is my message. It's mainly for the youth. You have to be confident, but you have to also know that the process is difficult, complex, and you have to accept to be part of this complexity, of this difficulty. And you have to accept also to take the burden, because I can assure you that I'm a little bit tired. You know, I'm 77 years old. I'm in politics and 50 years. I think that now it's up to the younger generation to move forward, you know. Otherwise, no, I don't think that there will be always people, you know, taking the lead and then moving forward.
Okay, yes.
So hi.
Short.
Yeah. What will your legacy be? How do you think you will be remembered worldwide, in Tunisia, in 10 years, in 20 years? Your legacy.
Well, my legacy is that, well, it's very difficult. I'm not dead already. I'm still. Maybe I will have some new ideas in the next few months. I don't know. But I think, once again, it's up to you, the young generation, to move. I have inherited from my father, from my grandfather, the love of the country, the fact that we have to get rid of the French colonialists, and then everything would be okay. And then I have inherited from people like Hasib bin Ammar, you know, they were my master in democracy, that we have to get rid of this dictatorship, and then we will get, etc., etc. And now it's up to me, you know, to learn to you that this process is complex. Once again, it's up to you to go forward, because I cannot accept that in this country, in this, you know, in Europe, they have succeeded in having a modern state, modern society, and then we cannot. We can. We are able, and we can, and we have to do this. Well, we didn't succeed for the moment, but the process is ongoing. Once again, it's up to you, you know, to go forward, to take the lead, and to achieve the objectives of many, many generations. Because the objective of having a new society, just society, is, once again, it's not the objective of a man or a political party, it's objective of society, and this society is generation after generation after generation.
Okay, so the very last question from the gentleman, and then my colleague Amani will wrap it up. I know there are many more questions, but we also have time for private discussions at the buffet.
The last question, please.
Thanks, Mr. President, for an inspirational talk. We really appreciate, and we're always inspired by your thoughts and your brilliant mind always. I understand in your book you talk about the demise of ideologies, and basically their failure, at least in the Arabic world, to tackle the transition to democracy and to the betterment of their life. And you propose to organize politics around themes such as climate change, demographic challenges, and scarcity of water resources, which is a huge problem in our region at least. But you do also pose a very innovative theme, which I have not heard any politics, even not in Europe, which is the challenge of artificial intelligence. And how, if you can say quick words, how that can be, as a theme, what kind of challenge do you see it for the next generations?
Very quickly, what we are facing in Tunisia, for instance, the main danger for the next 10 or 20 years, you talk about 10, 20 years, is the climate change. Nobody knows that the region of the world with the most important impact of the climate change is our region, North Africa and Middle East, which means that we're going to like everything, you know, food security, water, etc., etc. So the main problem is climate change. The second problem is economically is the debt. The problem of the debt. We are, you know, we are strangled by the debt. The third problem is this new what I call the E-generation. You know, we have now an E-generation in Tunisia, like here in Europe, but this generation is under this catastrophe of you know, Facebook, of you know, with all the problems, misinformation, etc., etc. And then we have the problems of you know, how to really deal with this new threats like artificial intelligence, etc. And what I am telling in this book, that in fact we have a new, totally new problems, but we still analyze those new problems with ideology, you know, the old ideology of the 19th century, of the 20th century. We don't even, you know, see this problem. They don't have the tools to analyze this problem, and they don't even see them. Look at the political Islam. The political Islam, for instance, is talking about Sharia. It's about dignity of Islam. It's about you know, identity, etc., etc. But look, this is what I'm all telling to my Islamist friend. Look, but I'm not interested in this problem. This problem are not important in that. The main problem is water. The main problem is seeds. The main problem is, do you have any, and some of them would say, it's not up to us to solve this problem. It's up to who is going to solve this problem. You say that Islam is the solution. But, and this is the same thing I'm telling, the same question I'm asking to Democrats. Okay, you are talking about democracy, that's nice, but do you think that democracies also have to, you have to think about this problem. This is why we have to invent new tools to analyze this problem, and a new way of thinking of this problem, and new proposition of this problem, and all this are out of the ideology, you know, the Islamism, liberalism, communism, nationalism, pan-Arabism, etc. They are out of date. And this is very difficult for people, you know, who have spent their life believing in political Islam or believing in Marxism, etc., to know, look, your way of thinking is out of date. Now we have, it's a tone, you know, we are we are really in a new period of history, totally new, with total new problem like artificial intelligence. And continuing thinking this problem with this ideology of the 20th century and even of the 19th century is completely stupid.
So I think we come to the conclusion now. And first of all, I would like to thank you to be with us and enlighten us about your book, and then present your philosophy and your politics. And I think that if this, well, the publisher, I think, of your book is in Doha, isn't it? Yes. And if, I'm absolutely sure, referring to the last word which we heard, if that discussion had taken place in Qatar or in the United Arab Emirates, we would not have a discussion about democracy or Islam, or we would have an artificial intelligence and that sort of, and that makes the difference. We have to see it. We are talking about very, very old subjects which are not of greatest interest for many, many Arabs. And there is a shift of interest and a shift of gravity now from the Mediterranean to the Gulf. And this is a very serious thing we have to consider, including the fact that there are other big powers which try to infiltrate the Middle East, I mean particularly China, and that Europe has no answer to it at all. And that makes me very sorry. Yeah.
This is correct. Europe has no answer for the real question, and we are very happy to have one of the thinkers, writers of the Arab world. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.